No one is against you. Make your path be about proving that truth, and you will discover what wholeness truly is. Think about that. No one, nothing is ever against us. Take a spiritual path that is about proving that, no matter what the circumstance, and you will discover wholeness, oneness with the infinite. It's a pretty important and pretty astonishing idea, particularly when we look at all the messes in our own lives, in the world. Nothing's against us, really? But if we go to Unity's first principle, there is one power and there is one presence in the universe and in my life, God the good and omnipotent. If that is the truth, if there is only God, if every aspect of the created universe is filled with the power and the presence and the activity of God, how can anything be against us? Thank you. Inspiration. Thank you, Carl. Jennifer. For the beauty of the earth, right? The beauty of the earth. And it's everywhere. It's all around us, right? And I love that this hymn praises that beauty, but it also praises just the gift of life on this planet and the Creator that put us here, right? And the earth is indeed beautiful. And so diverse in that beauty. And what's really interesting is that beauty shifts and changes. It's somewhat transitory, particularly as we watch the change of seasons. Now, I have to admit, here in Austin, I don't see much of autumn in the air. But back in Kansas City, the leaves are beginning to change. The temperature has gotten a little bit cooler. And there's a different kind of energy in the air. And the seasons are one of nature's cycles, one of her thresholds. And we've been looking a lot at thresholds, taking a deep dive and looking at all the thresholds in our lives and how we can engage those with meaning, with intentionality, and with grace, right? We have been in the midst of a 10-week series based on Karen Herring's book, Trusting Change. And we conclude that today, traversing the final threshold. But of course, those thresholds will continue in our lives because that is what the dance of life is all about. Karen Herring, in this final chapter, really brings together nature and thresholds. She shows us how nature can teach us about crossing those thresholds gracefully. She says, in our thresholding, not only does our current identity include the years we have already lived through, it also includes the future we are living toward. Just as the acorn carries within it all the potential, crown and roots and trunk of a large oak tree to come, so too our future growth is folded within us. Being fully in the present moment, we can find strength in expanding our wholeness to include past and future, roots and crown and seed together in an ever-growing identity reaching toward the light. I love that. I love so much about that passage. I love the acorn and the oak tree, such a beautiful metaphor for our spiritual potential and what we can grow and become. I love the notion that our identity is not fixed, that it includes our life experiences from the past, but it also includes what we are becoming. And to truly embrace our full potential as divine beings, we need to embrace that on an ongoing basis, to love and celebrate our past, but to be willing to lean into the future and to become more of what we are today. And to do this, we must continually widen what we trust, which is the final threshold that we engage today. And once again, Karen speaks to nature, inviting us to learn from nature about how to widen our trust. She says, claiming our place in nature's web of life is more than a connection between species, ecosystems, and places. It also enfolds us in a time that is cyclical, reminding us that we are part of a movement that does not end, constantly transforming, turning, and returning. From nature, we learn to trust change itself in time's unfolding, not passively, but participating in its continuous emergence. It teaches us to trust motion itself, letting ourselves move with it, and often in shifting directions. Trust motion, and that motion is the motion of spirit that is constantly breathing us, constantly calling us to a deeper expression of itself so that we can touch the world from a place of deep spiritual consciousness and be part of the healing and transformation that we all long for. You know, it's so wonderful when you think about the way Spirit takes that little acorn and transforms it into this massive oak tree. And it is even more wonderful to think about that spark of divinity within you that becomes a sun, that becomes a vibrant, rich expression of divine potential. This is the journey we are on, and it is a journey in which we are constantly invited to expand, to be more than we were before. In the 12 Powers of Man, or woman, Charles Fillmore says, you can never be what the Father wants you to be until you recognize that you stand alone with Him, with God, as your sole and original guide. You can hear His word when you have erased from your mind all tradition and authority of man, and His word will never sound clearly in your mind until you have done so. So what Fillmore says is that the spiritual journey is about a constant practice of deep listening, of surrendering our human wills to something larger than ourselves, and to invite ourselves to release more and more of our spiritual potential. And sometimes this occurs with grace and ease and joy and celebration. Well, and then there's the other times, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in a space where circumstances seem kind of challenging. Stuff shows up in our lives that we don't want, we don't like, we want to resist, we want to push it away. And when that happens, it is so easy to go to a place of that circumstance is against me. And more personally, oftentimes those circumstances involve other human beings. So it's that person is against me, or those people over there are against me. But is that true? Is that really true? Some of you may be familiar with Reverend Gary Simmons' book, The Eye of the Storm. At the beginning of this book, Gary tells a story in which he has a meeting with two Hindu wise men. And at the end of that conversation, they tell him this: no one is against you. Make your path be about proving that truth, and you will discover what wholeness truly is. Think about that. No one, nothing is ever against us. Take a spiritual path that is about proving that, no matter what the circumstance. And you will discover wholeness, oneness with the infinite. It's a pretty important and pretty astonishing idea. Particularly when we look at all the messes in our own lives, in the world. Nothing's against us, really? But if we go to Unity's first principle, there is one power and there is one presence in the universe and in my life, God the good and omnipotent. If that is the truth, if there is only God, if every aspect of the created universe is filled with the power and the presence and the activity of God, how can anything be against us? How could anything ever be against us if this is the ultimate truth? Now, this is not to say that God creates all these messes and puts us in them so that we can struggle and learn and grow. It is saying that no matter what the circumstance, God is there, God is present, God is active, God is available to each and every one of us. And that God will walk with us through the difficult stuff, allowing us to be transformed into a deeper expression of itself. Some years ago, I had a conversation with a colleague, and he shared a story about James Dillett Freeman that really resonates with this idea. For those of you that don't know, James Dillett Freeman was a Unity minister and a poet laureate, and he worked with the Fillmores, and his poetry, while widely known in Unity and used a lot in Unity, extended beyond there. His poem, The Prayer for Protection, traveled with the astronauts on the Apollo mission to the moon. And it was left in a little capsule there. It's his best-known poem. And so what this colleague told me about James Dillett Freeman is he was in a service standing next to James Dillett Freeman one Sunday, and at the end of the service, they joined hands and they recited the prayer for protection. And the congregation ended with the words, "All is well." Right? Something you're all familiar with. Well, when they spoke those words, James kind of froze up and tensed up. And so my colleague asked him about that afterwards, and he said, well, you see, I didn't write those words. All is well is not part of the poem. Because God never promised all would be well. What God promised was God would be there, no matter what. At that time, James's wife of many years was in the final stages of Alzheimer's. He would go to visit her, and she didn't recognize him. But he would read scripture. He would sing unity songs. And she would awaken. She would connect. She could feel the power and the presence and the activity of spirit, even in that state. And James could experience it with her and know that all was well. Some years ago, I took this idea that nothing could be against me and worked with it in the midst of a very difficult period, attempting to infuse that experience with the truth. When I found myself resisting, when I found myself creating enemy images, when I found myself trying to escape the situation or make it be against me, I would affirm, God is here. God walks with me, and God is always, always for me. Consequently, there is a blessing here, and I choose to claim that blessing. I choose to accept it. I choose to live into it. I constantly bathe that situation with these statements of truth, and also did lots of prayer and forgiveness work and all of that good stuff. And it took time. It wasn't always easy, but ultimately, the blessing appeared. And what I can say to you today is that I am a better person for having lived through that experience. I am a better person for allowing that situation to grow me and to transform me. I'd like to turn now to the 21st chapter of John. It appears after Jesus' resurrection. And Jesus appears to the disciples, and he has this conversation with Peter. And he asks Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter says, "Yes, of course I love you." Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." This conversation progresses 3 times. "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Feed my sheep." "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Feed my sheep." And then Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished. But now, when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go. After this, he said, 'Follow me.'" Now, I don't think Jesus was talking about doddering old age where we need someone else to dress us, right? He's talking about spiritual maturity. And the spiritual maturity is about releasing our human expectations and following in every circumstance the lead, the guidance of spirit. It is about fully engaging in the dance of life by trusting spirit to fill us, to show us the way, to guide us. And it's really interesting that the board had a lovely little text conversation this week about the daily word from Friday, which was about guidance. I'd like to share it with you now. Open and receptive to God's guidance, I live my best life now. Whenever I face a difficult situation, God within me seems to whisper the answer. Whether it is in the area of family, career, or any other part of life, I use my guidance to make the best choices. Like a crossroads, my future is before me. And I give thanks for my guidance, which tells me the way to travel. I am never alone because God is always with me. I close my eyes and open my heart to listen. In the silence, I discern my guidance. I move forward with clarity as I align with the truth of my being. I know what is mine to do. No matter my path, I am divinely guided. I travel with God. I am loved, protected, and so very blessed. The scripture is from Isaiah 30:21. And when you turn to the right or when you turn to the left, your ears will hear a word behind you saying, "This is the way. Walk it." So whatever threshold you're on, there is a power and a presence of God that is right there with you, inviting you to cross that threshold, to widen your trust, and to deepen your expression of the divine. What I know about each and every one of you is that you are a spiritual being. I love you. I bless you. Namaste.
Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.